Yeah. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Dawn of Van Life. Here doing another Van Life chat session, and I am here with YouTuber Matty Van Halen. How you doing, Matty?
I'm doing amazing, Dawn. Amazing. How are you?
I'm all right. So you're house sitting right now?
For almost 3 weeks now.
How much longer do you get to stay there?
Well, I talked with them yesterday, and they have no idea when they'll come back. They're isolating in Florida.
Oh.
They have a place down there, so they just decided if they got to be quarantined, they might as well do it on the beach. So, so that opened up this place to me, and it's been wonderful.
Oh, that's awesome. That is so awesome that worked out for you. So for people who haven't watched your channel, what type of van do you live in?
GMC Savannah.
And how long have you been a van dweller?
A year and 3 months.
Excellent, excellent. I saw you just did some upgrades to the van, add a little rack on the back.
It's gonna be great when it gets done. Huge upgrades coming.
So what made you want to get into van life?
Well, I think the first part of it was, working every day, 50 hours a week, and I just saw no light at the end of the tunnel. After I got through paying rent and utilities, there wasn't much money left over for savings and fun. And so I started searching the internet for cheaper ways to live and stumbled upon van life.
Yeah. And your van is it's pretty basic needs type thing. And you are so happy in your van. You are the picture of to me, you're an idyllic van dweller. And I know for a lot of people, it's about the glam vans and the gorgeous stuff. Yeah. But it's what do I actually need to be happy? And I feel like you found this happiness in this really great way. You're not tricking us, are you, Matty?
No, actually, van life was very good for me because I became a minimalist years ago, where I sold off all the stuff in my life. And so I was already out of the material world pretty much,
Yeah.
I was just looking for a way out of the constant grind of working all those hours and still not being able to save money.
Yeah, I feel you. I think there was one other time I was kind of, for lack of a better term, forced to live in a vehicle, but honestly, I wasn't. There was a choice at one point. It was I could keep, at the time I had an SUV, and it was I could keep my SUV and continue to be able to access work, or I could keep trying to pay for this apartment, but then not have a vehicle. And my work and ability to live and move in the world would have been much more limited by the apartment without a car than it was with a car without the apartment. And I was as long as I have a car, I can keep earning money. But that wasn't true if I just had the apartment, because the things I could do as work got reduced or taken away or became more difficult. And also, yeah, when I had the apartment, it was everything was going, it wasn't just, it was the rent, it was the utilities, it was the cable bill, and all those things that also come with, living in the apartment, a water bill, all that stuff. And you still get water in van life, but I don't really feel even if I have to pay for water, sometimes it's the things I would consider my utilities in van life, I still feel come out cheaper than they did when I was living in standard housing. But how about you? How do you feel about that?
Well, I had trimmed my bills down before, when I still had the apartment.
Yeah.
I had cut out cable television. I did, however, still have high-speed internet. Mm-hmm. So I streamed all my entertainment through my laptop, which I'm on right now. And so I had started weaning myself off of the utilities that come along with sticks and bricks housing. So when I moved full-time in the van, nothing really changed in my life, I still had the same job, still had the same hobbies and things I did. It's just when I went to sleep at night, it was in the back of a van.
Yeah. Now you say everything was the same, but as far as like your basic day-to-day stuff, i.e. everybody's grand question, showers, bathrooms, etc., etc. A lot of people mark that as very, very different when they move in a van. Like, how has that been for you? Like that kind of stuff.
Well, I had already had a membership at Planet Fitness, but I had never actually showered at Planet Fitness. I did my thing at Planet Fitness, then went to my apartment to shower, like most people. So that was a big change. I didn't even know the etiquette of how to shower at Planet Fitness. Where do you hang your bag? Do you wrap a towel around you or not? I saw people in there barefoot, and I thought, no way, I'm wearing flip-flops. I'm not wearing.
Oh, wow, protective shoes, yeah.
And so all of that I had to learn about. I'd forget to take things into the shower with me. The first few times at Planet Fitness, I'd forget my towel or my shower bag or stuff like that. So there was a learning curve, but gosh, I don't know what van dwellers are doing right now that Planet Fitness is closed down because of the virus.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's
if I didn't house sit, I would be doing a bird bath in the van right now if I wasn't house sitting.
Yeah. That's pretty much what I would be doing. And maybe occasionally going to truck stops. Truck stops are still open because truck drivers are still traveling. And so
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so you can still do those pay-per-use showers. So that's like one of the few like ways you can actually get a shower now beyond like being completely off grid and doing like one of those, shower bag things or just.
I have one of them. I have a pump up sprayer that holds 2 gallons.
Yeah.
And I've got a shower head attached to it, but it's just now getting warmer weather. I could get by with that now.
Yeah.
When this first closed down Planet Fitness, it was still cold,
Oh yeah.
So I could do that now. And luckily my van is actually just big enough where I can get down in the floor and use my basin to actually bathe. I don't know what people are doing. Like if you're in a SUV or a car, I don't know, because there's not even room to get dressed in there. So I don't know what they're doing.
I mean, you do the bird bath thing where you have a bowl of water, and it's not so much about spraying water over you as you take the wet cloth or the sponge or whatever. Like they wipe down people in hospital beds that a lot of times can't move. Like the nurse will come in and do like a sponge bath thing. And if nurses do this, obviously it's pretty. But yeah, you're not going to get a like pour over the head type system because there's just not enough room. But yeah, and I use that a lot just because in the minivan it can get really, really cramped. So if I'm doing like a wipe down in the minivan, I'll do like the bowl of water and some soap and water on a cloth, and then you wipe everything.
Wet wipes are my friend. For sure.
So I've asked this question to some other people. So COVID-19 is obviously like changed the world a bit. And even when we get to the point of trying to get back to normalcy, there's probably still going to be a lot of restrictions. Initially they may still be asking people to wear masks when they travel out in the world. Do you think that people are going to come out the other side of this with like, oh, I'm so glad I'm free, and like there'll be more of an explosion in van life? Or do you think people are going to be so cautious they're going to be like more afraid to travel out of a non-traditional setting? I'm sorry, a traditional setting to a non-traditional setting. Like which way do you think it's going to go in people's heads? Are people still going to be afraid, or is there going to be like, yes, we're free?
I haven't thought much about it, but my first reaction to the question would be I would kind of think people would be more hesitant. Mm-hmm. That's just my first thought. But then again, I haven't put much thought into that. Initially, I would say that people would be more hesitant to get into van life now than before COVID-19.
Yeah. I mean, but on the other hand, one thing I thought about, and I didn't think about this earlier when I asked it, is a lot of people's financial situations are very challenged right now.
Just thought about that, and I thought,
Yeah.
can I amend that answer?
Yeah.
A lot of them might not be. You know, most van dwellers that I know of are doing it by choice. They want to do it. But I have a feeling we're about to have a lot of van dwellers who don't want to be living in a van, but are forced to for financial reasons.
Yeah. I'm wondering what the economic impact of this is. I still think people are going to be cautious, which may make them afraid to go into a situation where they have to use shared restrooms and showers and interact in the world heavily in order to get a lot of resources. Yeah, so it's a very interesting problem because on one hand, I think people are still going to be afraid at the end of this, quote unquote. But at the same time, there's going to be so many financially compromised situations. Like how many people are going to be saying, how can I not have this 3-bedroom house for just me? Or, which I never understood. If it's just you, why do you have a 3-bedroom house? Like, what is it for?
What have we become, right? I don't know. I don't know how we got that way, but you know, I guess in the last 30 years or so is when that changed. You know, houses got so big and so elaborate and all that. You know, just and you know, a lot of people just they're so used to that lifestyle. You know, and all this sudden financial downturn is. I'm worried about what it's going to do to their mental state also. You know, this is going to be quite shocking of a change of lifestyle that's about to come.
Yeah. Yeah. And even with people being like generous for COVID-19, like a lot of apartment complexes and stuff, they're like, oh, we'll work with you because we understand this problem and it's really intense right now. But on the other side of it, you know, they're going to be in the hole. They're going to want their money. It's like, I'll work with you, but I'm still expecting, you know, this to pay back at some point. And so that's sort of the difficult problem, because once they feel like it's normal, it's that moment where, okay, now we need to get back to business. And possibly make up for the hole that was created by the problem. And that's going to be really, really hard on people. I personally was able to get a little bit of unemployment, which I feel blessed for, but I know some people are even struggling to get that. So yeah, that's my situation right now.
Did I tell you I got furloughed off my job?
No.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit behind on some stuff. So are you?
I got furloughed over a week ago, and I applied for unemployment, and I did get a response that they received my application, but I have not heard anything else since then.
Yeah.
So, and I'm essential. I'm in an essential business, and I still got furloughed.
Yeah, that's how bad it is. Well, it's like there's been like this fallout of essential business where I think like, you know, things keep getting slimmed out. As far as like what qualifies. There were people who were getting away with it in the beginning, and then like as this thing has gone on, more things have been cut off as essential, and some things questionably, I think. A friend of mine, he actually ran and got a job at a grocery store fairly quickly when he saw what was happening. And he's, you know, this very talented musician who had been, you know, surviving on that, and it's not something he can make. He was doing composition work, and it's not something he can make money on right now because he was composing for performances, and the performances aren't happening. So that, and his job isn't essential, but it's still like, it sucks, you know.
Yeah.
And when you have a non-standard job, you are really jumping through hoops with unemployment right now, and it's really it's sad. It's really sad. So, and I don't think the pop back is going to be immediate. Like, it's not like it's going to be, okay, it's over, all the jobs are back. because companies will have already lost money, and so they're really going to be considering, who comes back and who doesn't, and that's really sad. And
you're exactly right. It's going to be selective callback.
Yep.
Yep.
But I just hope everybody's able to get this promised help from unemployment eventually. But I know those processes can be really, really slow sometimes, and ridiculously slow.
Yeah, well, here in Tennessee, they're backlogged, a tremendous backlog.
Yeah.
So, and all unemployment is through the state that you live in. It's not a federal thing. So
yeah.
So it's a backlog. So I'm not holding my breath to hear an answer of when to expect any unemployment benefits, because there was a lot of people who got laid off or furloughed or lost their job about 3 weeks before I did. I was about 3 weeks late after the big rush.
Yeah. And they're still waiting?
They're still waiting.
All right. Well, let's get on to happier subjects. Let's talk about stealth parking for a little bit. So your first night sleeping in the van, what was it like? Were you nervous about it? Was it perfectly fine? Like, how did it go for you?
I was extremely tense. And here's a funny story. I didn't even leave my apartment complex. I stayed in my apartment complex in the parking lot right outside of the apartment that I just moved out of. No kidding. That's what I did my first night.
Yeah.
And didn't sleep but about 3 hours that night. And then, after 2 weeks of scoping out places to park, you just learn it, Yeah. You just learn it. You got to try it and learn it. There's really no other way around it. You just find a way to get more comfortable. And if you feel like you're in a sketchy place, guess what? You are. Get out of there.
Yeah. And the good thing is, like, you have a key and you can turn it and you can go somewhere else. And like, my whole thing was, I don't get people who sleep in like neighborhoods they know are bad. It's like, you literally have a vehicle. You can park it anywhere.
I know the bad neighborhoods in Nashville. I don't park there because I know where it is. Now, if I start traveling and I go through a city, I have no idea what's good and what's bad. I could see myself getting in a situation where I parked somewhere that seemed okay, and then later in the night finding out I parked at a bad place.
So some people have like feelings about the white cargo van looking creepy. I only think it is when it like hangs around a neighborhood too long and it looks like you might be some predator hanging out. But otherwise, like, I see bloody cargo vans like all over the place. So I've never really seen it as like they're going to immediately know because it's a cargo van, because cargo vans are also work vans. Right. So as long as it's not static for weeks at a time, I've never really understand the hang up about those. But like, have you had any like knocks or sort of any negative reactions since living in the van more than a year now? Yes,
my first 3 months I had no problems, and all of a sudden about the third month, I got a knock by the cops, and they said, "Hey, we got a call from the neighbors that there was a van parked out here and they're wondering what's going on." And I was like, "Well, I'm just sleeping in my van." I was just straight up honest with him. I said, "I live in this van and I'm parked legally on the street." He said, "Hey, okay, you're cool. You're cool. We just have to check." Nicest cop ever. And then it happened again about a week later. And I thought, I got to do something. It was not in the same neighborhood. I move from place to place. I don't stay in the same place, So that's when I said, I've got to make this van look commercial. This van has got to look like a plumber or an electrician or, a painter or something. So that's when I put the sign on the side and the high-vis reflective tape on the back bumper and the orange cone thing. Never had a problem since,
Oh, awesome.
You want to make the neighbors at ease. When they're at ease, you're left alone.
Yeah.
You know.
And I've always said, like, the biggest person you're trying to avoid is not the cops, because ultimately, cops don't. It's the neighbors. It's the people in the neighborhood, and they're the people you're not trying to raise red flags with. Like, honestly, cops, if they think of you as quote unquote homeless, they don't want to bother homeless people. Like, they don't want to, except for maybe the random jerk. But mostly they don't care, even though if they know exactly what you're doing. But once the neighbors call, that's when they have to, you know, bother you and knock and be like, all right, or tell you to move on. Which I've been told a couple of times by security. It's never been a cop. And it was really honestly like after the first knock, it's just like you explain your situation. They either tell you you're fine or you're not. And if you're not, you just move. Like you literally just move the van and go back to sleep. And the comparison of times that I've gotten a knock to the nights that I've just slept through the night and got up and did my thing in the morning are so much higher than the knocks. I don't really panic about the knocks.
Yeah. But you know, I don't blame those the neighbors one bit. You know, they're looking out for their neighborhood. You know, they're worried, their guard's up, they're concerned. But once I took steps to put their mind at ease, it made my life easier too, you know, like making the van look like a commercial van.
Well, that's good. That's good. I've always like, you know, because personally I was in a car first and then I was in a minivan. And the advantage of the minivan is like, it looks like, you know, a soccer mom.
Perfect. Yeah. Nobody gets nervous when they see a minivan. Ever.
Yeah. They just think some moms nearby and there's soccer balls in there, you know. You know,
minivans are perfect.
Yeah, but I know, like with commercial vans of any size, there's one that it's a work van, but two also it's associated with, you know, rapists and you know, child molesters and all that kind of stuff. So it is a more questionable space. So it's good to know, like the whole like make it look like a construction van thing legitimately worked for you to just give you a little more peace of mind in the urban sort of van life situation, which is very different from like the rural van life situation, because you can do all kinds of stuff to the outside of your van. If
you have a creepy looking van, you're going to get a lot of attention. I mean, either make your van look very cheerful and colorful, you know, go with like Chrome went ahead, just put vinyl on here. This is who I am. And I'm just go ahead and do that, you know, because it makes people's mind, it puts them at ease, you know. You know, instead of do something to your van like that, it's going to make your life a lot more pleasant.
Yeah. And I also think just not having your guard up if somebody comes to ask questions also helps a lot. Because I know I do work a lot in the Home Depot parking lot. And literally there's been these weird times where people would just like, all right, I just need to know what you're doing. And I'll be like, oh, I'm like putting together my solar system, or like I'm doing this or doing that. And they're interested and engaged. And instead of feeling like, oh, get out of my business, you know, letting them see a normal person who's just like, oh, I chose this, you know, I did it for these reasons. I find it makes overall people more accepting of the lifestyle who weren't even thinking of it. So that's important to me. It's also one of the reasons I personally started a YouTube channel. I don't know what motivated you to start yours, but mine was especially for city van life. There's this high stigmatism, high negative stigmatism about that, about trash, about dirty people, about drug use. And I thought like it's important to flip that image for people who are 9-to-5ers who happen to live in a van.
I'm 100% on board. Same reason with me right there. Because I'm old enough to remember when somebody lived in a van, it's because they were a felon or they were on the run, you know, from the law, you know. That's what I remember as a child of hearing about somebody lived in a van. So yeah, the whole thing about starting the YouTube channel is I just wanted to flip the stigma. That's all.
Yeah.
And make friends with like-minded people.
Yes, absolutely. It was funny because before or at least when I was thinking about initially, I was in a really bad roommate situation that I needed to get out of, and I wasn't finding housing quickly enough. And one of the posts I saw this was the second time I'd even considered like nomad life in my life. And then I went back to standard housing, and now I was considering it again. And I saw a post, and somebody asked, and it's probably somebody who has a job. They were like, has anybody ever gotten a van and just lived in it while going to their day job? And literally somebody replied to that, that's just homelessness. And like, I was like, why? Like in my head, I was like, why? Why is that stigma? And I guess it's because it isn't sort of that glam van life fantasy that everybody wants, where they get this gorgeous van and they're always out in these beautiful locations, which is a lie anyway. Most of those people still spend a lot of time in parking lots. Yeah. And life is beautiful and you don't have a job, but you're paying for this glamour van. And so I guess to that person, to just get a van and live in it to cheapen your lifestyle was just being homeless. But I'm like, that's wrong. And that's backwards wrong thinking. Because the van still costs something. Like I still got to buy food. I still got to buy gas. So why not keep my job and take on these lower cost items while, living in a van instead of an apartment? So yeah, that was just a ramble. That was. So do you think you would ever, I know you have Buddy, but do you think you would ever consider getting like a pet in your van?
I couldn't properly care for a pet. I just couldn't, I mean, you can't leave an animal in your van in the summer when you're at work, so, that's animal cruelty. So yeah, I couldn't have a living pet. Buddy, he requires nothing of me except to be on camera on like every other video. That's all he requires.
I feel the same way. Like sometimes I want a dog, but then I'm like, there are days where I'm like away from the van for like hours, and unless I was making enough money to afford like a pet sitter or a daycare, a doggy daycare, like it just wouldn't be fair to the animal. And so, like, it's very important to me not to be selfish as much as
you got Pooh, so
yeah. I also have Isaac, the Build-A-Bear dog. And neither of them require me to feed them.
But there are days I would love to have a dog. I mean, a lot of days. I mean, man, I would love, like at the park, if I'm at the park, I would love to have a dog, but there's just no way I could properly care for a dog when you have a full-time job. Well, I don't now, I'm furloughed, but up until a few weeks ago, working all day. What's the dog going to do? Sit in the van all day? No, I'm not.
That's how I feel too. As much as I love animals, it wouldn't be fair to them. But yeah, that was one of my random questions. All right, so I think I have like a final question, which is my big wrap up question. Yeah, I asked my other question. Actually, I do have two questions. Do you have any regrets in the way you started van life?
No, in the way I started, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. None. I started putting my toes in the water before I dove all the way in. I didn't build the van all the way out in the beginning. Still haven't. I'm still adding things because I didn't know how I would like it. But the way I started, I am 100% no regrets on the way I personally did it. It worked for me.
Yeah. And I like the way you did it. I think it's a smarter way to like not have permanent things. Also, just like kind of get the idea of what you want in there, figure out what works, figure out what doesn't, adjust, change, grow,
Well, I'm a planner by nature, and other people are, just because you're a planner doesn't mean you can't be spontaneous. It's just the way I'm wired that I always plan ahead and try to think have a plan B or plan C. So that's the way I started it, is the way that worked best for me. Other people just seem to be able to jump in their van and go. And I wish I could, but I just, I just, that would just take me over the edge doing something like that. I have to plan it out. So that's just the way I'm wired.
I mean, some people would consider what you did pretty bold, just moving into the van itself, depending on your perspective.
Well, it's not as bold. The craziest thing I ever did was I woke up one morning when I was living in Birmingham, Alabama. And I woke up and said, I'm selling this house. I'm selling everything in it, and I'm moving to Florida. And then 7 weeks later, it happened. Everything I owned, I had a Jeep at the time. Everything I owned fit in that Jeep and went with me to Florida. So living in a van is nothing compared to selling everything you own. That was the time I went minimal, and that was 2013, and I've been minimal ever since.
Yeah, I think after the first time I was like unintentionally homeless, for lack of a better way to describe it, that was when I was like, I never want to own, and I had an SUV. I was like, I never want to own so much stuff I couldn't just grab my stuff, put it in a vehicle, and go. Like, I don't want to have to depend on a moving van, on other people, because other people sometimes don't come through. So I very much appreciate that kind of living. And also, like, I realized, like, the more stuff I got, there was more stuff I didn't use anyway. There was just more stuff that sat around where I was like, why do I own this? When's the last time I touched it? So I think, like, I slowly just became a fan of minimalism, especially because my mom, love her to death, rest in peace, she was a hoarder. And after she passed away, cleaning out the house was like, Mom, why do you have this from, like, when you were like 18? You've never seen.
I can see how that would have a big role in making you a minimalist. I can see that for sure. Do you ever get more anxious if you have more stuff? Does it make you anxious?
Yeah, and I'm at the point where it's like I feel like I actually need to do a flush out of the van, because I'm feeling like, and I think it's because, like, I've had stuff that I've replaced with stuff that works better, but I never got rid of the old thing, and I don't quite know what to do with it. Like, donate it, toss it. Like, is it good enough to pass on? Who to pass it on to? But at the same time, it's this annoying extra thing that I know I don't need because, I've replaced it with something else. And so, I can I can get when I feel like I'm getting like too much stuff, I'm like, okay, it's time to purge. Purging can become like almost like a tick. It's like, all right, it's time to do something.
Yeah. A good purge is like a good dose of medicine. It really is.
Yeah. So my final question is, like, if you had to give advice to somebody who's thinking about getting into van life, which people may be doing after COVID or may not, just in general, like, what would be like your major piece of advice that you would give to somebody?
You know what? I'm going to give advice I've never given before, but I think it's time that I give it. If you're going to get into van life, don't be the kind that ruin it for the rest of us. You know what I mean? The kind that throw their trash out. If they park overnight, they dump their stuff out. There's a small percentage of van dwellers, very small fraction of a percent, that mess it up for everybody else.
Yeah.
They dump their trash out and don't put it in a garbage can, and they park in the same place, and they overstay their welcome, that kind of stuff. So that's my advice. I used to say other advice, like, don't, get over your fear and all that. But no, now I'm getting down to the nitty gritty. Don't ruin it for the rest of us. That's my advice.
I actually think that's the best piece of advice, because, like, it's just like, you know what? You'll learn the other stuff, but just don't like make it harder for me to go to bed at night, because, like, really it only takes a single bad experience to put, like, the neighborhood on watch.
I know, it can take one van dweller out of 1,000
Yep.
mess it up for the other 999.
Yep. And then it's like every time those van dwellers, and you're like, this is that one dude. Like,
Yeah, because they're going to think we're all the same, you know.
All right, so that pretty much covers stuff I wanted to cover. I appreciate you coming on. My words are going away. I appreciate you coming on the chat with me. I appreciate your channel. I love seeing more representation for like the 9-to-5 or city dweller, and like just sort of like it's about minimalism and sort of having control of your life more, I feel like, and you know, taking away some of the ridiculous pressures of being in the traditional lifestyle. So yeah, I don't know if any of that made any sense, but I appreciate you and I appreciate your channel. This is what I'm saying.
John, I love your channel, and I really think this project you've got going on with this interview process is fantastic. I can't wait till it's all put together and we get to see how it turns out. I'm excited for it.
Thank you, Matty, and enjoy your housing while you have it. I know it's a great time to work on the van while you're not living in it. That's one of the hardest things when you want to do a big project and you're living in the van. It is a little bit harder than when you can just put it in a driveway and kind of work on it. So
I'm out here in this driveway and I got a lot of tools. This guy's got a garage full of tools I've been able to use. And within the next week, I'm going to have the generator, the AC, the cargo. It's all going to be functioning. And it's going to be my best van life summer ever.
I'm looking forward to seeing the best van life summer ever. Yep. All right. See you later.
Take care. Bye, Don.
Bye.